I'd like to call to order this study session for August 7th, 2018, of District 116. Roll call, please.
Member Carter. Here. Member Hall.
Here.
Member Patton.
Here.
Member Pulaski.
Here.
Member Fisher is here. Vice President Rollins Gay and President Bennett.
Here. We apologize for starting a few minutes late this evening. Are there any additions or corrections and modifications to the agenda?
There are none.
Are there any citizen statements? Any citizen that wishes to address the board? Please fill out a goldenrod sheet and turn it into our recording secretary. Jason, are you our guy tonight? The state award-winning local television expert.
Yeah.
I forgot
Thank you,
the award.
Jason.
But congratulations. Hearing no citizen statements, moving forward, we have no call for exec session after tonight's meeting. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We have some great administrative reports tonight, or at least one, our first one.
Well, I think they're all great, but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
we actually put the best at the front tonight. And so, Mr. Foley, if you would like to just approach the microphone, I promise I will not make you give an acceptance speech, but I do want everyone at home on camera to see you and your son and his amazing finger puppet, which he is, I think, debuting his new children's show with.
Oh.
No. So the board is very familiar with Mr. Mark Foley because he's here often talking about his Habitat for Humanity trips, the service learning projects that go along with that, and the amazing kind of hands-on experience and immersion in civil rights history that he brings his students on. I am honored and not surprised at all that Mr. Foley was named the 2018 Illinois Gilder-Lehrman History Teacher of the Year. Woo. So if we could have a round of applause. So, Mr. Foley, I know enough about the Gilder-Lehrman Award to know that you are now in the running for a national Gilder-Lehrman History Teacher of the Year. But could you talk a little bit about what this means in terms of some of the things that you get to do this fall?
Hi, everybody. So this is Zachary.
Hi, Zachary.
Do you want to say hi? So it is a real honor. I think I don't know exactly what I get to do differently. I know that we get some library supplies and we get some different things from the Gilder-Lehrman organization, which is cool, and I get automatically accepted into any summer institute that I want, which is also super cool. So that's been great, but I think what I think is most important, and the only message I really want to convey, is that I'm going to tell you a little story about how this happened. And so 6 years ago, maybe 7, I was teaching my 11th grade American history class, and I started on a civil rights unit. And I started that year by asking the kids if they did any volunteer work. And over the course of 3 different classes through the day, so it would probably be 80 or 90 students, I had, I think, less than 5 students raise their hand and acknowledge that they regularly did some volunteer work. So by the end of the day, my 8th hour class, I was a little, I guess annoyed is probably the right word, sad. I was probably maybe more accurate, and I probably said something like, it's just kind of disappointing to me that you guys haven't done this. Even more of you don't do this, which is not the right way to do that, by the way. As a teacher, you're not supposed to shame people. But one of my favorite students raised her hand almost immediately. I'll never forget this moment. Her hand shot up, and she said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, that's a really good question. So I started telling them how I had been to Mississippi starting in college and how I had been going down there for, at that time, it had been like 15 years. And she said, well, that sounds really cool. Why don't we do that? And so that began the process of developing this program. And the program has been difficult to do. It's been incredibly rewarding, as you all know, because you've read the stuff and you've seen the kids talk. But it was hard. And I think the one thing that I've kept in mind as we've done it is that for the most part, we have been very well supported by the administration doing something that is unorthodox. right? So it's not something that we have felt, I can guarantee you most schools don't do it. And we have felt supported in that way. We snuck it in under the wire. I'm going to call out Joe Wiemelt because Joe, as some of you remember, came in to the high school as an interim principal one year, and that happened to be the year that we did this. And so we had a bunch of students march into his office, I think, and say, we want to do this thing. And he was like, oh, okay, that sounds great. So we had approval. And then when Matt Stark came over, we were already kind of like, well, we have this approved, but we want to make sure you want to do it. And he said, fine. So I think the award for me is really a testimony to trusting teachers and letting them have their instincts and letting them try things out that maybe are a little bit unorthodox, but can pay off in really big ways. So the last thing I would say, this was a really weird application to fill out. I've been nominated for this award before. I think Zachary's about to fall asleep. It's great. But it was weird because I didn't want to do it, and one of my friends kind of convinced me to do it, and she said, you should try this because it'd be really good for the program. And when I was writing it, I had to use the pronoun I, right? I do this, I do that. And as all of you know, like, that's the wrong pronoun, right? This award is not about me or it's not about I. It's really about a team of teachers that have worked really hard together. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge all of that. So and with that being said, thank you for having me over. And Zachary, are you ready to go home? Mm-hmm. He said, uh-huh. Don, are there any other questions or are we good? Okay.
I just want to thank you for all that work that you did, because one thing you can say, you made some families very happy by helping build those houses in the South. So I myself commend you on that work. Next year, promise. Yeah, no, I'm gonna be done with school, so yeah, next year I'll be out, done with school.
Mark, thank you for what you did, but also thank you for what you're going to do. Thank you. There's someone with a hand up there in the back. You have to come to the mic if you want to make a comment.
I just want to say that my daughter will be a senior this year, and we talked about whether she was going to graduate early, and then we talked about was she going to graduate mid-semester. And as of 2 weeks ago, we were like making these final decisions, and Joelle said, absolutely not. The more I've thought about it, I so much want to be a part of Habitat for Humanity, and I want to be on that trip. And it's through those things that Mark and Laura do that when the kids get connected at the personal level, that is what motivates them to keep doing their best work. And so Mark's exceptional. I've been able to work with him, but I just was really surprised that that was the motivating factor for Joelle. Great job, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Matt, our next report is our summer construction update.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. So updates, I will start at Yankee Ridge. We happily achieved the occupancy permit there just this past week, so we're ready to go as far as that. The Regional Office of Education gave us the stamp of approval. So that's on topic for Yankee Ridge. There's a brand new kitchen at Yankee Ridge. We passed the Board of Health inspection, cleared that. We have some new fine arts classrooms. There is additional safe and accessible parking, both north and west side of the building, so that's new and exciting there. Central AC in each classroom, as the teachers and students should enjoy that. There are 8 classrooms with some technology lighting. Technology lighting in this capacity is tunable lighting, and it's really neat. You can change the energy level and the mood of classroom much more than you had done before in the past. And to me, it's a really exciting element to have that at Yankee Ridge. Probably the best news for the board is that it is on time and on budget. So, the Thomas Paine School had a remodel of sensory space. and classroom. So that is going to be complete. They are going to put the bow on it, according to the contractors, this Friday. That classroom also has that tunable lighting, which would be really, I think, really something great for a sensory space to have, setting the mood of the room through the lighting. So that was a great thing to have that accomplished there. The next item would be at the high school. We had the track resurfaced and restriped, so that's completed, ready to go. Dawn and I were out there today. We saw some people running on it, enjoying it, and it looks great, and it's very functional. Along with that, at the high school, we had some facelifting done to all the vocational shops, the auto shops and the welding shops, and just walking through there earlier this past spring, it looked like the original paint was there. So we got that done and knocked that out. The attendance room had a facelift as well, new carpeting, new paint, and we gussied that up pretty well. So that's an accomplishment there at the high school. The Oscar Adam Gym, new flooring, new wood surface, in process. Progress is definitely being made. And that's going really well. That should be completed shortly. So those are the updates to some of the summer projects we had going on.
All right, any questions for Matt?
Thank you.
I noticed,
Thank you.
I noticed Yankee Ridge was on time and on budget. Are the other items on time and on budget?
Yes. All are on time and on budget.
All right, thanks. Okay, thank you. Next, we need to establish a committee, so we'll be doing that under the action items, I believe, correct?
Yeah, I just had a quick report. I provided you with something. I actually see a typo in my memo. I apologize about that. I put the wrong number for the board policy the first time I wrote it. Board policy 5:150, facility management and building programs, states that the superintendent asked the board to create a special board committee to consider nominations and make a recommendation along with supporting rationale to the board about any proposed names to a facility, a room, or a structure. And we did have a fairly compelling proposal for the naming of the Yankee Ridge Gym after a person who went through Yankee Ridge, went to Urbana Junior High School, competed in the Summer Olympics in gymnastics, and has continued to...
And is a graduate of the high school.
And is a graduate of the high school, yes. I was kind of going in order there because she actually took time out of her educational studies so thank you for pointing that out. She took time out of her educational studies to compete in the Olympics, and she has come back many times and spoken to students. She's still an active supporter of Urbana schools, even though she does not live in the community. Her family does, and I'm going to stop there. I'm going to kind of let the rest of that be a little bit of a surprise. Board members have seen all the documentation, but I do want to make sure that I don't go too far without making sure that the board appoints a committee to study this proposal. And so part of my role as superintendent is to propose a group of committee members, and I've asked Dr. Brian Anderson, who's the Yankee Ridge principal, to chair the committee. People who have agreed to be on the committee, Jackie Douglas, who's a USD 116 parent, actually at Dr. Williams, but she's a former Yankee Ridge student and Urbana High School graduate. Liz Lynch, who's a long-term Yankee Ridge educator. She's a special education teacher. Melinda Lundberg, who's the librarian at Yankee Ridge. Lauren Redmond, who's our Yankee Ridge parent and PTA president. Jill Knutson, who's Yankee Ridge parent and PTA vice president. And Miss Mackenzie White, who's a Yankee Ridge teacher and a former Yankee Ridge student and Urbana High School graduate. This committee can have up to 2 board members, and so one of the things that I ask is that the board select 2 members to serve on this committee. And I will also say that I have reached out to a variety of other people and kind of waiting to hear back, and those people could be considered alternates on this committee if we needed fill-ins at any point. I have not gotten confirmations that they would be able and willing to serve, but I did want to point that out, that this wasn't the only group of people I've reached out to, but it's a nice number for a committee like this.
John Dimmitt, board member and past Yankee Ridge student, would like to serve on this committee. And I believe Ruth Ann is interested. Are there other board members that are interested? Or?
I've been on the committee a couple of times. I don't have to, but I'd really like to.
I've served on a couple of past nominating. Okay, all right. So when we get to that action item, watching board members' reactions, if we would add Ruth Ann Fisher to the list and John Dimmitt to the list. And that will be the committee that will be considered when we get to the appropriate spot on the agenda.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much. And then I have one more, just a real quick one. One of the things that we've done this summer in response to some conversations with the board in a goal-setting meeting that we had over the summer with Patrick Rice from IASB, the Illinois Association of School Boards, was we're changing the format of the agendas, and you might have noticed minor formatting things in this agenda, but what that actually indicates is a change in kind of the way Lori and I are processing the agendas along with my administrative team. And we're moving all of the agendas into a Google Docs format in an effort to make the agendas, a draft of the agenda shareable to all board members a full week in advance of the board meeting. And then we'll also change the way eventually board packets and board information will be presented on the district website. It will be more searchable, a little bit easier to find and keep things organized on the district website. And it will also actually take out a couple steps in terms of publishing to the website. So that piece will be an eventual change. The immediate change is you're going to see some minor changes in formatting and numbering. The other thing that I'm going to say that is one of our goals for this fall, and I would say early in the fall, is because we're moving them to a Google Docs format, we plan to try and reduce the amount of paper that we generate here at board meetings for board members. And in doing so, we're planning on having Chromebooks available for all board members to log in, and then you would have actually the board packet on a Chromebook so that you would have that instead of us having to print off the entire packet every time. And so that will be one additional thing. That will mean some one-on-one training that we will do with board members. And just to be clear, the Chromebooks will not be something that you get to take home, but they'll be something that will be here for board meetings. And so we'll schedule some of that training probably as we get closer towards the end of September is my goal. But I wanted to share that with board members because you will be seeing a draft copy of the agendas come out a full week in advance, and I would like to state that those are drafts. And so therefore, if you see something that you want added or something that you think is missing that you want discussed, you'll have several days in order to get feedback to us so that we can get that on the agenda.
Any comments, questions?
Just real quick before, Dawn and I were speaking yesterday, and this came up, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that the Chromebooks are already here. They've been here in the district doing a different purpose, and they're going to get repurposed for us. They're not a brand new purchase just for us. I want to make sure everyone, but he understands that we're recycling, repurposing, reusing,
Yes.
And whatever else we need to do.
In fact, they're our oldest generation of Chromebooks, so they won't be they won't be the ones that our elementary students are using at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. They'll be kind of first-gen Chromebooks. So I will say, wear your reading glasses.
Numbers too, so.
So they'll, it just gave out. So old Chromebooks for us old people, so we can work it pretty easily. Might be important for us to function with them, so. All right, we're ready for some individual action items. This evening we have various administrative personnel items, and do you wish to comment on them?
Yeah, I'll turn this over to Kathy Barber, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Professional Development, to introduce some of the new administrators who are here tonight to say hello to the board.
Thank you. As you guys know, this is one of my happiest tasks. Let's get excited about this. We're not necessarily going to go in order as we welcome and congratulate our administrators that are new and that are changing positions. We're going to do elementary, then middle school, then high school. So first, I'm pleased to announce that Natalie Bretz will be Assistant Principal of Yankee Ridge Elementary School this coming year. Natalie Bretz has worked for Urbana School District since August of 2007, much of that time in leadership roles. She's been part of the Unified Professional Development Team since 2012, Racial Equity Leadership Team since 2016, and her most recent position, until just a few days ago, it feels like, was Director of Professional Development. Prior to that, Ms. Bretz was Director of School and District Improvement. She was Staff Development Activity Coordinator as well as an Instructional Differentiation Coach. She started her career as an 8th grade social studies teacher at Urbana Middle School. She also served as Program Coordinator for the American History Teachers Collaborative from 2011 to 2014. Natalie Bretz earned a Master's of Education, Educational Organization Leadership in May 2011, a Bachelor's of Arts in May 2007, both from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Please help me congratulate Natalie Bretz.
Starting my 12th year in Urbana, I couldn't imagine working anywhere else. I'm very excited to be part of the Yankee Ridge community, working alongside Dr. Anderson, and being a part of the transition to French dual language. I'm very excited about this change. So I look forward to working with all of you in a new capacity.
Congratulations. Next up, also at the elementary level, I'm pleased to announce Adriana Ochoa as Assistant Principal of Dr. Preston L. Williams Junior Elementary School. Ms. Ochoa has been Assistant Principal at Leal and Yankee Ridge Elementary School since January of 2018. Prior to her coming to Urbana, she was in Collinsville, Illinois, where she was an English language learning teacher for 7th and 8th graders. Prior to 2014, she worked as a special education inclusion teacher at both Doris Intermediate School for 5th graders and Creightner Elementary School for 5th and 6th graders, both in Collinsville. Ms. Ochoa earned a Master's of Art in Teaching English as a Second Language from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville in May 2014. She also earned a Master's in Educational Administration in 2005 and a Bachelor's of Science in Special Education in 2001, also at Southern Illinois. She earned her middle school endorsement in 2014. We're excited to have her at her new school. Please help me congratulate Ms. Adriana Ochoa.
I'm very excited to be going to Dr. Williams this year. I hate to leave Yankee Ridge and Leal because they were great schools, great principals there too. I learned a lot, so I'm hoping that I can make this new transition and working with our Hispanic families more one-on-one at one school. I've already gotten positive remarks from a lot of the families when I tell them my new role, and speaking in Spanish is a great asset, and their smiles, their faces light up, so very happy to be there. Thank you.
Congratulations. Moving on to the middle school, I'm excited to welcome Maria Elvira as Assistant Principal of Urbana Middle School. Since 2016, Ms. Elvira was a Special Education Coordinator at McHenry High School for District 156. She held numerous positions with Allendale Association from 2001 to 2016, including Residential Service Educational Site Director, Special Education Teacher and Teaching Assistant, and Mental Health Counselor. She's certified in CRIS training, Therapeutic Crisis Intervention, and is a para-evaluation certified educator. Marie Alvear earned a Master's of Arts in School Leadership in 2014 from Northeastern Illinois University and a Master's of Arts in Elementary Education from Roosevelt University in 2008. In 2007, she earned a Bachelor of Science in Workforce Education, Training and Development from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Please help me welcome to the district, Ms. Marie Alvear.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm really excited to be a part of the Urbana School District and a new member to the Urbana community. I'm a little nervous, sorry. I can say that I'm amazed at how much I've learned already, and I only hope to be able to give as much as I'm receiving. I think this is a community of lifelong learners and continuous growth, and I'm super excited to be a part of that. So I thank you.
Congratulations. Although he isn't able to be here with us tonight, I wanted to make sure to introduce Patrick Russell as the new Associate Principal for Urbana Middle School. Since July of 2007, Mr. Russell has been Assistant Principal at UMS. He served as Dean of Students at UMS from 2001 to 2007, and prior to those positions in Urbana School District, he was a teacher at Dr. Howard Elementary in Champaign Unit 4. Mr. Russell earned his Master's of Education, Educational Organization and Leadership from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in December 2000. At Illinois State University, he earned his elementary education bachelor's degree in May 1995. During his time at ISU, he was an active member of Iota Phi Theta fraternity. Please help me congratulate Mr. Patrick Russell. Moving on to the high school, we have another new administrator that I'm excited to welcome, Jorge Alvear, as Associate Principal at Urbana High School. Mr. Alvear comes to Urbana School District from District 50 in Harvard, Illinois, where he was the Assistant Principal of Crosby Elementary School. He was Dean of Students at North Chicago Community High School from August 2015 to June 2017. From 2001 until 2015, he was lead special education teacher at Allendale Association in Lakeville, Illinois. Certified to train others in restorative practices, Mr. Alvear has also been certified as a trainer in therapeutic crisis intervention and has provided professional development as a national restorative practices presenter. Mr. Alvear earned his Master's of Arts in Educational Leadership from Northern Illinois University in 2014 and a Master of Arts in Elementary Education from Roosevelt University in 2008. His undergraduate degree in Workforce Education, Training and Development was earned in 2007 from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Please help me welcome and congratulate Mr. Jorge Alvear.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the board. I just want to say that I'm extremely excited to be here in Urbana. It's a great move for us. I mean, we moved 3 hours away to come here and work as a family, and we're really excited. Everything that we see in the community, in the schools, every individual around us, everybody's just positive. So we just want to grow with this community and the philosophy that you have here on restorative practices and trauma-informed and social-emotional learning. We're just ready to jump right on board and ride that train with you. So thank you.
Congratulations. And finally, I've gotten to introduce her before. I'm thrilled to get to introduce her again. I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Dolores Brown as our new principal of Urbana High School. She was originally introduced in June as the new vice principal of UHS, but she's transitioned to the principal position. Prior to coming to Urbana, Ms. Dolores Brown was principal at Stephen Decatur Middle School, and in that leadership position, she did an excellent job coordinating programs and services that resulted in providing an academic climate conducive to maximum educational development. In the last 2 years under her leadership in the middle school, there were gains in climate improvement at all grade levels that would have only been possible with the cooperation and support of her teachers that she garnered. She places great importance on being visible in classrooms, hallways, and almost all athletic events. She also spends many evenings mentoring staff members on successful strategies to engage our students and to attain a supportive classroom environment, as well as communicating with families, not only discussing concerns and challenges, but also discussing student triumphs and successes. Her vigilant pursuit of student success is evidenced in the professional development that she's long provided for her staff. Research shows that clearly that schools that provide positive, safe, and nurturing environments focused on student learning do better than schools that lack this important focus. Knowing this, Ms. Brown has been pivotal in school-wide adoption of PBIS, and through collaborative and reflective leadership, she has proven herself to be able to shift climate and culture. She's received the respect of her colleagues through her understanding of the importance of school culture, and knows that when teachers are actively involved in mapping change, the result is improved morale and willing participation. Her academic career includes a Master of Science in Educational Administration from Illinois State University in 2010, a Bachelor of Science in History, Education, and Political Science from Illinois State University in 2007. She's currently a doctoral student at Illinois State University working toward an EDD. She was awarded the Illinois State University Education Administration Foundation's Principal of the Year in 2016. Please help me congratulate and welcome again Ms. Dolores Brown. Thank you.
I'm back. Thank you to the board, to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. I'm definitely honored, and it's a privilege to be the leader of Urbana High School. I'm just thrilled at already getting started and making sure that we continue to build upon the legacy of this building, this district, and this community. So thank you for entrusting me with this this position, and I promise you we're going to do our best, and with the team that I have, nothing but great things are coming. Thank you.
A motion to hire the administrators that have been introduced to us would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Rollins Gay and President Demmett.
Yes. Motion is approved. Welcome aboard. 8.2, I'm sorry, not 02, is approval of separation agreement with the licensed employee of the public body. Is there a motion?
I move acceptance of the administrative recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Carter?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Patton?
Yes.
Member Pulaski?
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Rollins Gay
Yes.
and President Demmett.
Yes. Motion is carried. 8.3, Facilities Naming Committee. We have a recommendation before us, including the 2 board members. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Motion's carried. Thank you. Study topics, hiring practices.
Yes. So tonight, we have Ms. Jacinda Cromer, who's our Director of Human Resources, Mr. Larry Simmons, who's our Recruitment and Retention Specialist, and Ms. Jessica Brown, who's our Professional Development and Curriculum Coordinator, to present a overview of our hiring practices. They are joined by Board Attorney Susan Nicholas, who has been consulting with us for, I don't want to say how many years. Months, well. Works with Robin Schwartz.
Yes.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Jacinda Cromer. I'm Director of Human Resources, and I have to apologize up front that I hope I don't cough too much, and I've been doing it kind of all night, but right into the microphone, so, and I hope my voice stays good. Otherwise, Susan's going to bail me out, right? Larry?
Do my best.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so thank you so much for tonight for the opportunity to present on our hiring practices and our interview practices. So we're going to get started. Again, we've already been introduced. Larry Simmons is a new recruitment retention specialist. Jessica Brown will come up here in a little bit. She's professional development and curriculum coordinator, and we've got Susan here as well. So I believe Larry, for the overview, do you want to start? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I'll be brief and then I'll have a seat next to Jessica because my part is brief. But just to give you a quick overview of our presentation tonight. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Is that better? Yes. Okay. A brief overview of our presentation tonight. We will cover recruitment and retention committee. We will also cover common questions and concerns, our research, USD 116 interview and hiring practices, and we will have a teacher Urbana video that we will show tonight. So quickly, our recruitment and retention committee was established in December 2017, and we have monthly meetings. It was established so that we could create pools of candidates, of qualified candidates, and so I will just go through quickly our 17-member committee, which consists of Ms. Jacinda Cromer, Director of Human Resources, Jessica Brown, Professional Development and Curriculum Coordinator, myself, Larry Simmons, Recruitment and Retention Specialist, Dr. Joseph Wiemelt, UMS Principal, Ms. Christina Gail Lewandowski, the Principal of King Elementary School, which I believe she's here tonight. And Dr. Wiemelt is here. Also, Ms. Dolores Lloyd, she's also here, Principal of Thomas Paine Elementary, I think, did she leave? Oh, no. Dr. Jennifer Heinhorst was here. I think she left. Okay. Principal of Wiley Elementary School, Ms. Guadalupe Ricconi, the Director of Elementary Bilingual Programs, Ms. Diane Richardson, the Director of Student Services, Ms. Dion Webster, the Director of Family Engagement and Student Support, Ms. Shauna Shear, the Director of Student Engagement and Adult Education, Ms. Lily Jimenez, the Elementary Bilingual Coordinator, Ms. Janice Mitchell, District Parent and Community Outreach Liaison, Dr. Donald Orrin, our Superintendent, Dr. Samuel Bynum, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning, and Catherine Barber, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Professional Development, and Mr. Todd Taylor, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. Our mission for the committee: Urbana School District 116 strives to recruit, retain, and develop highly qualified teachers, faculty, and staff, especially those who reflect the demographics of our student population in race, ethnicity, and spoken languages. Our goal is to reflect the race and ethnicity of our student population and the race and ethnicity of our faculty, staff, and administrators, to reflect the top 3 languages spoken by our student population and the languages spoken by our faculty, staff, and administrators, and we are speaking our top 3 after English, which would be Spanish would be the first, second is French, and the third is Mandarin. The next point is our improvement and increase the hiring pool of difficult to fill positions such as special education, early childhood with ESL bilingual approval, bilingual speech therapists, and career and technical education. And our last goal is to implement clear pathways to develop our current employees and USD 116 students into future teachers, teacher leaders, and administrators. And we are currently working on this last point this year to have a teacher institute where we will have students collaborate with the University of Illinois. I've been in conversations with the University of Illinois to begin to have students evaluate what teachers do so they can increase their desire to be teachers. So that's something that we're working on currently. And that's my portion.
Great. Stay up here. Whatever. Okay, so certainly our presentation tonight is mostly about our hiring practices, our interview practices, but we have to do that within the lens of recruitment and retention. And so that's why it's important for us to just kind of put out there that we do have a committee that meets every single month to really talk about all of these practices, how to get good candidates, strong candidates, fill our hard-to-fill positions, as well as try to find candidates of color so that we can actually reflect our student population. So it was good to just kind of put that out there. That's not necessarily the focus of our presentation, but it certainly is probably what has brought up some of the questions kind of about our hiring practices, is because we are doing a lot of heavier recruiting. We have kind of out-of-the-box things that we're doing in recruitment that we will certainly come back at a later time and really showcase that. We're pretty excited about some of our strategies, but anytime you do something like that that's new, you have people start to question, okay, so how does this work kind of with the hiring? How does this, how do they work together? Is it starting to kind of question what our hiring practices are? Is it kind of challenging what our actual practices are? So we want to speak mostly about that to make sure you understand that, yes, we're doing some heavier recruiting, but we have a very strong policy and practice about how we still go through the hiring practice. So that's the main focus, but we'll come back to the recruiting too at the end. And of course, any questions. So something that I wanted to put up there, I'm not going to read this to you, but I do go into it a couple times when I talk about job postings and interviews. I reference the CBA, our collective bargaining agreement with the UEA, as well as we've got board policy, as you know, about minority recruitment. So we have two policies and language that reflects that. Yes, we do have a need to try to get, it says right there, staff that reflects our demographics. So we're taking this board policy, we're taking what the UEA and administration in the schools have decided is important practice and trying to put it into our recruitment and retention kind of practices. So that's really where our mission and our goals come from. We also have policy in the CBA as well as in board policy that has to do with what we do with our vacancies, how we post jobs, how we do our hiring practices. So I'm just putting this there for your reference too. Again, I'm sure you know quite a bit of it, but in case we need to come back to it, you'll notice quite a bit of the language that's written here in both the policy and the CBA is also within kind of our structure of our hiring and interview practices. My voice is doing a little better than I thought it would. Okay, all right, so just kind of getting right out there before we jump right into our hiring practices, we want to put on the table what we know some of the common concerns are, things that we've heard people question, especially again because we're doing more recruiting. So things have come up, questions have come up, and I want to lay them out on the table. I'm not going to address them right at this slide, but I'm going to come back and circle back to them at the end of the presentation. Once you kind of understand the whole cycle of a job posting and how we go through our interview and screening process, I'll come back and I'll touch upon each of these concerns. But these are concerns that perhaps you've heard of. We've certainly heard of them, so we're just kind of laying them out there. So that some people are saying that, no, we're only interviewing right now. We're only screening and hiring people of color. We are not screening or considering all of the applicants for every position. Again, these are concerns. These are false concerns. So I'll come back and talk about them again. We've heard that people are saying we're not interviewing all of our internal applicants. We're not allowing interview committees to discuss candidates following the interview, and therefore I think there's a question of whether the interview is just for show. And maybe we've already kind of pre-selected who we're going to hire. We're just kind of going through the steps to appease people. That's a concern we've heard, a question. And that our recruitment efforts, all of this work that we're doing, are really compromising our whole hiring and interview practice. So again, I'm going to go through what that practice is so that you kind of understand all the steps and then come back to these and really state that, these aren't true at all. I understand the perceptions and where they're coming from, so I'll discuss that as well. Okay. So if you read through, I created a 2-page handout that I believe was copied. Was it copied today too? That was shared with the board right before the weekend. I don't know if you read through all of it, but I gave 3 research articles that back up the statement that there is this growing body of research that says students of color perform better and they have better attendance, they are suspended less, they actually attend 4-year colleges at a higher rate when they have teachers matched with teachers that look like them, so same race teachers throughout at least one, and it gets progressively, as you have more and more teachers throughout your education, that increases even higher and higher. I don't know if you read through it, they were quite lengthy, so I just want to point out a few of the highlights from those 3, and then I'll talk about the second one. But those articles, and those were just 3 research articles that all point to the same thing and have the same conclusion. One of them was focused on 12,000 students that were in primary level, so kindergarten through 3rd grade. And they talk a lot about standard deviations, which it's been a long time since I've had that kind of math. I'm grateful for one of the articles that ended up explaining what that actually meant. But they said that the data that they found out, that it was statistically significant. That yes, students of color will raise with just one teacher at that level of their same race will increase 3 to 6 percentile points within the standard deviation. Another article said that they looked at 3 million students. They demonstrated that it really affected the students who are performing at lower levels, that it really had an effect on them. The final one said that black males, especially with same race teachers, kind of at the intermediate level, 3rd through 5th grade, it really reduced their high school dropout levels. This is the one that thankfully said, it talked about standard deviations and percentile points, but then it said really that equates to 39% increases. 39% better, it reduced their high school dropout rates. That's very significant. And so it increases their chances of getting to the colleges, and again, their cumulative effects. So you have one teacher, the second teacher you have, and they focused a lot on the grade school, and so there needs to be more data, and there's probably more research out there. This is what I had found that I just wanted to show, and I thought there were very strong pieces that represented that. And so this is our why. Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to find teachers of color? Because we need to reflect our student population. So that's what our recruiting efforts are all about. The groupthink and the bias in interviews and hiring practices is also well documented in research. And this really goes to talk more about our interview committees, and I'll come back to this in a little bit, about why we're not really asking or wanting our interview committees to sit around and make this group decision at the end about who's going to be hired. So, in the past, we may have had big table conversations about, okay, who does everybody want to pick? Who's your top pick? And when you do that, you really open yourself up to the fact that, if one person is louder, if one person speaks more, seems to talk with more conviction, have some more confidence. One of the articles really talked about, like, if you say something with conviction or confidence, then other people start to question, well, maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about. And they start to think that maybe their thoughts or their beliefs about who they want to pick for this particular position, they become less confident with it, and then they can get easily swayed. And so that can sway, and when you don't have interview committees that necessarily also reflect our student population, then you end up getting a same as me kind of result. So you get a large interview committee that decides, oh yeah, well, this person's great, but it's this implicit bias that they kind of pick somebody that sort of looks like them or feels like them. Nobody means to do that, but it's well researched that does happen. So you have to be careful about that, and we're trying to get written documentation so that we can value those. So those 3 next articles, which were shorter, really did talk about those different implicit biases that happen in the groupthink. So those are just kind of on the table as a lens for some of our practice and some of the reasons why we're doing some of our practices. Before I get into the interview and hiring, I'll just keep going, unless there's a board member. Yeah? Okay. All right. So
Are you opening it up for questions at this point then?
I can open it up for questions if you want me to, or we can do it at the end.
Let's do it at the end.
Let's do that. Okay. So interview and hiring practices. So this is like basically the job cycle, the life cycle of a position when it's posted, all the way through when we actually have the hire and we see these great administrators come up and get approved. So administrators, just like teachers, just like crossing guards, just like any position we have in the district, really goes through basically the same framework or cycle, life cycle of a job. And so it starts with the job posting. So an administrator says, we need the position. They go into our system. We have an excellent system now called Talent Ed, Recruit and Hire. We moved to that about a year ago, and it really helps us to, it has all our job descriptions in there in a job library. It allows us to really have oversight, management, and to be able to watch that life cycle, so it makes it very easy for us to just oversee all of these steps and control it a little bit better, so we can speak more confidently that we're really following this true cycle. So job postings, if it's a UEA position, all positions actually list at the bottom of the job description that it is a UEA position or not a UEA position. And that's part of our CBA. So that's an agreement that we list that. There's a note at the bottom. So UEA positions, as per the CBA, 17.01, thank you. Is that for me?
Yes, from Laurie.
I could do this. I really need to cough, but I'm not going to do it. Maybe I will. Okay, excuse me. Are posted for 7 days or longer. So that's just our agreement for all our UEA postings. And then we typically follow that same time frame for other postings. Many positions are way longer than 7 days. Might be 2 weeks, it might be a month. It really depends on when we can pull together a screening committee, when we really need that position posted. We live in kind of a school year cycle. So if we post something in April that we know is until August, it might be posted for 2 or so months, 3 or so months before we actually need to hire, because we don't need to fill it until August. So we're collecting lots of applicants. So those are our minimum kind of limits. And again, we typically follow the same parameters for all of our non-union positions. And all job descriptions, again, like I said, state whether it is a UEA position or not. So that's the job posting. And then for advertising, they all go out on our website. They're all listed there. But they're also emailed out to our entire school district. Anybody who has an Urbana School District website, they get job posting, job posting, job posting, especially at this time of year. It's obviously a little bit heavier because we're kind of staffing for the school year. And then they also automatically, this is nothing that anybody in my staff needs to do. Anytime we hit submit into our Talent Ed system, we have a system that connects it to Indeed and Monster and School Spring. And School Spring is actually kind of the middleman. It helps to connect it and route it. So we post it on our website, it automatically goes to all three, and we get quite a bit of traffic through Indeed and School Spring, which is amazing. So those are automated, and when we close it, it closes from there. So it's nice to be able to get it out to a larger community, a larger base. Some positions are even advertised further than that, based on their need and based on their position. So for example, all administrative positions are posted on the Illinois Education Job Bank. That's where administrators in Illinois look when they are trying to, move into that path, find another leadership position or move up. So it's the highly kind of frequented path for Illinois principals and directors and superintendents. So they get all posted, and that's something I have to do manually, but I have templates already built in there, so it's easy for me to just log in to our account and do that. But then other positions based on need, they might go to News Gazette, they might go to the Illinois Association of School Business officials, officers, college boards, Handshake, job sites, Facebook. We've used kind of a plethora. And when we decide whether it's a position that's very specific, that really needs to go out beyond maybe just a teacher site. So maybe it's not just a teaching position, and it needs to, it might be a certain kind of clerical position, or it might be something in Matt Abatez's department where, not maintenance people or facility people might not be looking on a school district website. So we have to advertise in different ways, or in the News Gazette. So we kind of make that decision based on those. But the basics are all for every position, no matter what.
And I'll just add here, it seems odd that Facebook has become such a strong recruiting thing, but it is, and it's not just these positions that people aren't necessarily looking on the teacher and administrator websites. It's teaching positions. It's really hard to fill positions, basically begging, please find me a speech language pathologist. So those social media sites are becoming more and more active for advertising for positions.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then after it's been advertised and we decide it's time to kind of screen applicants, then you pull together screening committees dependent on the position. So in the CBA, If you have a teaching position or a union position, we try to find screening members who are similar to that position or have expertise in that position so that they can help look through those applicants and determine who ends up being, move on to that next stage. Sometimes you might post a position that is a little bit more hard to fill and you get, 4 applicants. As long as they meet the minimum requirements, an administrator is going to interview all 4 because they need to bring them in and really make a decision. 4 is a perfectly acceptable number to kind of handle for an interview. Some positions get 100 applicants, and there's no feasible way any of us can it'd take 2 weeks to interview 100 people, and we don't have that kind of time, so you do have to start screening. And so one thing that's really nice about our system in TeleNet 2 is that it allows us to do all sorts of filters and views. So you can set a view to figure out education, and you look at all the applicants. You just have those 100 applicants, and you can sort by, if they have a bachelor's or a master's. So you're trying to kind of determine who really meets those minimum requirements. If it's a bilingual position and you need someone who speaks Spanish because they're a one-on-one aide with a special ed student who speaks only Spanish, and that's kind of their position, we can look to see very quickly without opening each applicant or application just from these views and tools that the system allows. So we will do that. The way we kind of decide is first, like I said, if there's only a few people, you go with those few people as long as they meet those basic requirements. So that's the first kind of look, is do they meet the basic requirements? Every single job description states, whether it's a UEA one or not UEA one, it states what those basic requirements are. Crossing guard, you have to be 18 years old. You have to obviously pass fingerprinting and background checks. So those are basic requirements. And so if they're not 18, then they can't even really come in for that interview and move forward. The second way to screen applicants is to look for excellence, look for job longevity, look for, do they go beyond just the basic requirements with education? Do they have experience? I'm picking a crossing guard and I happen to see, oh look, they have experience as a crossing guard. This is somebody I want to talk to and bring in. So you can use the system to tag people and kind of group them in yes, I want to move forward with this person. I'm still thinking about this person. This person doesn't meet, kind of group them, doesn't meet requirements. But then when it comes down to it, if we end up with 20 people still who meet the basic requirements, who demonstrate excellence in different ways, you still have to figure out ways to determine who moves on to that next step. So then we look back at what our recruitment retention practices are, and we really think about, okay, we do need to try to hire candidates of color. We do need to find people who speak French when we are hiring support staff and lunchroom staff, because those students need that representation at Yankee Ridge in that dual language program. So yeah, we're looking for excellent candidates, but there are ways for principals to sort for that as well. And so we're always going to look for the basic requirements. We're always going to look for excellence, but then we're going to try to find people who will help us with those as well in order to make it just to that next step. Once we get to that next step, you take that pool of candidates and you always are picking the top candidate, regardless of, they've already met the minimum requirements. But I think it's important to say that. And those are our goals as a district as well as a committee. So that's true. I don't know if I said everything.
I think so.
Okay.
You want to clarify, though, that in general, I believe the practice is so long as qualifications are met, the minimum qualifications for a position, and in the event they need to narrow applicants, minority applicants will be given an interview. That does not mean that 9 minority applicants won't be given an interview. And no matter what, only people who are qualified will get an interview. But in the end, the final determination in who gets the position is the best qualified fit and applicant for the job. And I think one reason that they wanted me here is because that's an aggressive approach to really meet up with your equal opportunity policy and goals. It is legal. It's aggressive. It's legal, but there's no discrimination that's actually happening here based on any protected class. And in the end, nobody is given a preference in the hiring decision based on a protected class. So it is legal, and that's something I want to make sure the board is aware of, because from some of the rumors I've heard, that was a concern.
So reflecting the questions that I've heard, so going down this selection process, and we've gotten to demonstrate excellence, and then we're ready to hit the last one. And everybody's met minimum requirements. Everybody, a few people, you know, everybody that's still in the pool at that point in time. And you're at the point of then picking who you're going to interview. So somebody who is not of color, but goes well beyond the minimums. But there are other people of color or of language minority or of any other issue that we're working with. And there are 3 or 4 of those, 5 of those, and your limit is only to limit is to interview 5. And the person not of color but who far exceeds the minimums is number 6 and is not interviewed. So is the best candidate being sought for the job?
And I can speak to, my understanding is that this screening only happens if you have so many applicants that you can't interview them all. I can't imagine a situation.
I've got that.
Okay.
And my scenario understood that. And so no one that is not qualified is being interviewed. Don't
Right,
get me
right,
wrong.
right.
And nobody that has not met all the other
Minimum
things
requirements, yes.
is not, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I've heard is that sometimes the best candidate, because they are not in the protected class and are not part of the goals, are not being looked at in favor of people that meet the recruitment and retention goals.
That would be a very difficult question to answer without comparing each application, but I cannot imagine a situation where you have 6 applicants that meet that minimum floor, for lack of a better term, and you say, well, we're only interviewing 5, if you really have 6 outstanding candidates. I don't believe that there's a strict number cutoff that applies. But in every case, every time you are determining who's going to be interviewed, you're still going to have qualified applicants that get cut off. It's going to happen if you have too many applicants. So in this case, it's that top level that is going to be getting the interviews. Nobody who's not meeting that floor, and that's what I've been hearing, is there are people who aren't even qualified, that is not happening, nor would we recommend that be happening. But I've not heard of a situation where somebody who was a non-minority, who was an excellent candidate, didn't get to interview because of a random threshold number like 5.
I invented the 5 and the 6.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm saying a random threshold.
But the point of my question is still out there. Jacinda, do you have a response for it?
Yes. I mean, I can tell you that when we get through this whole cycle of job postings, that the principals have to submit all of the names of who they screened, who they interviewed, write down all the different races, provide all of their assessments. They do interview assessments. So I get to look at all of those for every position that gets sent in. And I can say that, I know yours is a random scenario. So in your specific situation, if there's somebody who excelled way above and beyond but was a non-minority candidate, of course a principal is going to interview them. They're going to want to bring in the most excellent people that showcase themselves that way, or have extra degrees or job experience that really matches. They're going to bring them in. Absolutely, even if they're not non-minority. So they would either add an interview slot, or they would look back to those other applicants and perhaps not pick one of those. So when you really look at this, you have to look at this as a hierarchy. So yeah, first they do the cutoff, basic requirements, and then that weeds them out. You have 15 people left maybe, if you're lucky. That's not always the case. Depends on the position. And then you look and you say, okay, let's look at and compare these 15 with how many people have experience in this type of position. How many people have excellence with their degrees? How many people know how to use computer skills for, or are used to Skyward?
I know, but
Because
I'm
all of that.
I'm listening to
They
your
narrow
language.
it down.
Yeah, I was listening to your language, and
Yes.
your language was, we go through the first 3 steps of the screening.
Mm-hmm.
The pool is still too large to interview everybody. And so how is the decision made when you're at the 4th screening level? Help us meet our recruitment and retention goals.
Mm-hmm.
How are you differentiating people that are still left in the pool when you hit that point?
It's a very...
What you stated
Mhm.
was that you're showing a strong preference for people who meet our recruitment and retention goals.
And I'd say...
And the comment I've heard is that that has been at the exclusion of people that in other ways show themselves to potentially be a better candidate.
And if they show themselves to be a better candidate, then they would be selected through screening. Lots of times principals will use rubrics to help determine, like for administrative hiring, I can speak on that because we have a very select process for that. I take the job description. I was a former 6th grade teacher. I know how to design a rubric. And I have 8 different categories, and people have to go through for hours all of the applications. And they score them. Does this person exceed? Does this person meet? Principals have that same sort of thing. It's not the same type of rubric, but they use different ways to assess for teaching positions. They use different, especially when you've got 25, 30, 40 applicants, and you still have a large pool. You'd pull people in to start really assessing. And at that stage, all of the race and ethnicity, language, only if it's a basic requirement, would really play in. But you're looking for excellence based on their job experience, based on the answers that they provide, based on their skills. So then you start putting together basically you compile all of those rubrics. So when we do it, I can speak very much on administrator hires. All the rubrics get turned into me, and I spend hours that evening going through and saying, oh, this person got 4 excellence for leadership, 3 meets requirements for this, but is a little weak maybe in this area. And then there's not necessarily a cut score, but I do kind of do almost like the scatter plot type thing where, okay, these administrators really excel, and then people just rise to the top. And you do that, and then if you get people who rise to the top, and in your case, that person would rise to the top because you're saying that candidate excels. And so when that candidate excels, then they clearly would get an interview. So then you move to the next step. If everything is equal, and there isn't a non-minority candidate that excels, or it's something else that plays into it, like a language that's required, then you might look at the race and ethnicity, because that is an important thing that we all value and know is essential. And so that's when you make those decisions. In your scenario exactly, that candidate would get selected before maybe you even go to that next step.
Go ahead, Paul, that's fine.
Well, first of all, I just want to applaud you for making a concerted effort to hire the staff that will be a best fit for our the composition of our student body, so I applaud you for that. But the question I have is, since we're not really allowed in a blind application to inquire about the protected class of an applicant, how do you determine at the screening stage if a given applicant is, the race or background of a given candidate?
Okay, now I believe that that application has that as an optional item to fill in. It is not required. And some people choose to fill it in, some people don't. And from there then, if an applicant chooses to fill in that information, and it is marked as optional, then it can be reviewed. But not every applicant does, and nobody is punished for not. Nobody is penalized for not putting their, demographic information of that nature in.
I have a couple quick questions. My first question is, do all internal candidates get an interview if they're qualified for the position?
All internal candidates that apply internally
Yes.
complete an internal application. There's two different ways to actually apply through the system.
So do they get an interview, though?
So if they apply through an internal application, they meet the minimum requirements. By the time we do screening and interview, yes. Yes. There are times when,
interesting.
and this has happened, where people don't complete an internal application. The system has a way of flagging. So when you go into our website, I don't know if you've gone to the employment page, there's two options: apply as an internal candidate, and then the system takes you to a screen that says, are you an employee? You have to type yes, and then it flags you as an internal candidate. And then you have a much shorter application. All you have to, it's nice for internal applicants, because you just have to put your current position, your current building, how long you've been, just some basic information. So that's a courtesy to internal applicants. But if they go to the external and they don't flag themselves, then sometimes there's a potential of that getting missed, because that's one of the views. So yes, principals are supposed to do internals. We know that's sort of that's kind of come up as a glitch, and I'm trying to figure out a way to not have that
with all
happen.
the technological stuff, I'm surprised that it just doesn't automatically come up as an internal, because their name should be on our website as an employee.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're not in our talent ed system, though. So that just because when they apply, they're not applying into our personnel system. They're applying into an application system. So if it's the first time they've ever applied, then they have to go through, mark themselves as an internal, and then we're able to see it. We'll go through and hopefully see that they're internal, and I think I have some maybe workarounds so that I can make it work better. But yeah, if they apply as an internal, if it happens before we've set up interviews and kind of done a job offer, then absolutely, they're offered an interview. There have been times when we've already gone through the process, we've got a job offer extended, and then somebody applies, but at that point in the process, it's too far along.
My other question is about the screening committee.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the person that lets other staff know, and how many people are typically on the screening committee? Is it just building-wide, or does it include central office also?
It would depend with administrator positions.
I'm talking about regular positions right now, not administrative.
Okay. So the principal would typically reach out to maybe the department. If it's a 6th grade position in math, we just posted one, that principal would, thanks, Todd. That principal would reach out to maybe the team members who work with that person on the 6th grade team, or reach out to other math departments, or perhaps a special ed teacher that would work, include some other administrators in that position, maybe send out a whole school email that says, hey, we're screening if you're interested. So that could happen, and that's handled at the building level.
Okay, and how many people are, is there a set number that you need for the screening committee?
It would kind of depend on just the timeline of the posting, what kind of position it was. If it's a crossing guard position, I hire crossing guards, so I keep coming back to this one. But I don't necessarily need a screening committee because I don't get a ton of applicants. I can look very quickly and interview anybody who applies. So as long as they meet the minimum requirements, I'm going to bring them in for an interview. But if it's a teaching position, a faculty position, a larger type position, then they would do some sort of screening committee.
All right, and typically do you, before you hire a candidate, do you usually have all of the paperwork and background information on them, or are you usually kind of waiting to get the last few pieces in before you actually make the offer? You know what I'm saying?
We wouldn't do a background check before. That comes after the hire or
Okay.
after the offer, but we do the reference check. So that's coming up. Should I continue through
Yeah.
this part and then we come back? Okay. But yes, we do the reference checks before we do the offer.
Yeah, I apologize for starting the
don't.
questions.
No, it's
You
perfectly
did have 3
fine.
more slides.
No,
I'd
it's
noticed
fine.
after I
It's-
asked.
This is, yeah, that's fine.
And then I got a question for her.
Oh, yeah.
When she gets done.
So I went backwards. Okay, so then once you've selected your candidates, you have an interview. Often they are interview teams that are similar to the screening team. So maybe people who know something about that position, have expertise in that position, or work closely with whatever that opening is. They would be pulled into the interview team. Those interviews would have high consistency across interviews. And so the questions have to be the same, kind of the experience has to be the same. So you wouldn't want to interview 5 people, at the nice table, and then one person gets interviewed kind of in the hallway, because then you're opening yourself up to kind of a different interview practice. And that's not, you don't want that either. So if that person didn't get selected, then, or had different types of questions, then it certainly could be an issue, and that's not the case. It's very consistent. And then it comes to that groupthink thing, that when people decide complete the interviews, they have interview score sheets that they have to complete, and then they write all of their notes. They write their final recommendation, highly recommended, recommended with reservation or for another position, and then not recommended, and then they put all of their notes. They also do scoring in the different categories, very similar to what we do with administrators. So it's very similar. And then often it's also loaded into the Talent Ed system as well, so that we can see it across the board, what those interview results are, or they'll send them in to us. Go ahead.
And since she's coughing, I'll add that this is getting more and more common in districts, and especially in bigger districts. And from the legal perspective, the concern is not doing it this way and doing the rankings on sheets where people don't talk. I typically like it when people don't talk in interviews, because they can't say something that will set them up to be for a discrimination charge down the road. The issue that I've seen with the score sheets is making sure that you've adequately trained your interview committee to make sure that instead of saying the things that we want you to not say, you've actually written them down on the piece of paper, which I've had come up in other cases. So, and as an example was where somebody wrote, I think this person looks too old and feeble to do this job, and you just can't have that. So really, the issue isn't trying to avoid the groupthink and using the paper forms. It's making sure the people who are doing the interviews understand what factors cannot be considered in interviewing a person.
And the situation she was talking about did not happen in the Urbana School District. No.
Somewhere else.
Just put that out there. Okay, and then after the interviews, after they complete all of their written notes and their recommendations, those are all submitted to the hiring manager, who will review them and then do reference checks. Sometimes of just the top candidate, if one really rose to the top, sometimes to a couple of candidates, so that you really kind of understand that background. And the references are completed for external hiring, meaning somebody who's new to the district coming in, not a current employee. They would have 2 reference checks. And those 2 references, one could be, a colleague, or some sort of peer, or somebody at community or church, and the other one has to be a current or recent supervisor. If they're an internal hire, so I work at central office and I'm going to hire somebody from the high school, then as a courtesy, as well as a way to check to make sure that this person is still a qualified and excellent person. I'm not hiring anybody from the high school, so don't worry. That I would reach out to that supervisor and do a reference check with just that one person. The only time we don't do a reference check for an internal is if you're hiring somebody for your own position. Like I'm my own supervisor. And so if I ended up hiring somebody and moving them on, I wouldn't necessarily have to do my own reference check. I would already know. But other than that, these things are done. And I know they're done because all of the recommendations, when a principal finally does the reference checks, decides which one's the top candidate, looks at everybody's recommendations, thinks about the position and what's best for the fit, they have to put a recommendation into Talent Ed, and that just automatically dings me. I'm in every single workflow, or human resources in every single workflow. It has been me, and it comes through, and I review all of those. It's all in the system. And every single reference, they have to ask 2 questions, which are listed here. If given the opportunity, would you reemploy, or would you employ this person if you're not in kind of a hiring position? Or do you have any reason to believe, do you have any reason to believe this applicant is unfit for employment in a public school district? So they have to answer those. And I read every single one before I go through and do the approval. And so those have to be done and in the system before the administrator or the hiring manager ends up calling and making the job offer. And then once it's accepted, they go in and they put in the recommendation so that it dings me, and I just review that everything, all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. I want to make sure that it's all done. And then we kick off the hire. And then that's when all the rest of the paperwork comes in place. They have to do direct deposit and all that fun stuff. And then they get their fingerprint background check, and we all assess that before they actually start the position. So they get fingerprinted, and then we check to make sure that there's nothing that school code would make it so that they would not be allowed to work. And so that's kind of the life cycle of a position. And then I'm going to come back to those common concerns. Do you have anything? I thought you were grabbing for it.
No.
Okay. And talk about those in a little bit more depth. And then that pretty much concludes my part after I touch upon these, so I can open it back up. I know that there were a few other questions. So some common concerns. So we've already went through these. I want to touch upon each one. So one of the things that we're only interviewing or hiring people of color, and that's simply not true. We're interviewing qualified, excellent candidates, and through all the recruiting that we're doing, we are lucky enough to have larger pools of diverse candidates. We just are. We're happy about that, but we're not interviewing only people of color. We're not selecting only people of color. We are selecting excellent candidates, and yes, maybe those pools represent a more diverse pool, and that's excellent, because that's, we're looking for people who really meet the best minimum requirements, but are the best applicant for the position in the end. So screening, we're not screening or considering all applicants. That's simply not true either. Even if there are 50 applicants or there are just 5 applicants, we open up every application and review them to look. We use the Talent Ed tools in there to help it kind of read the different portions of the application for degrees and skills, all of that. It's just pretty slick how the system works so that we can help it filter and select things. But then we can also open up the whole application. We're looking for everything. We're looking for those strong candidates. So yeah, we use those tools and help us to really find those applicants. So we are screening everybody by the time the screening happens. Sometimes we'll screen and start the interview process, but the system itself leaves a posting open, and they might start gathering or continue to gather applicants. And those that trickle in after maybe an interview happens, when a job offer or references, those people might get missed because we're really kind of at the end of the cycle. But the system hasn't closed it out quite yet. So it closes it out automatically when a recommendation comes in. The system, when it just knows a recommendation comes in, it gets approved, it closes the posting and it removes it from the website automatically, and it removes it automatically from all of our other social media sites that it goes out to. So again, it's a very slick system. And if it happened, yeah, if applicants came kind of at the tail end of that when we were already wrapping things up, perhaps they wouldn't be screened. But it had already been open for 7 days, 10 days, or whatever in that cycle. We're not interviewing all internal candidates. That's a thing, we just kind of brought it up. And there have been, usually that's not the case at all. I mean, we're interviewing all internal candidates that meet basic requirements. So if there is somebody who doesn't, like we've had maybe applicants who apply for a teaching position, but they don't have a teaching license. And so in that case, we might not include them in on the interview. There have been applicants who accidentally or inadvertently didn't apply for the internal, through the internal link. And so they got missed, but then they were invited back in. So once we caught them, they were invited back in for an interview. And then anytime that were to happen, we would, of course, open it back up again. But we're going to try to find ways to make sure that people know better how to get through the internal link, or I can figure out a way to kind of flag all of our internal people a little bit better. As more people apply, the system just automatically starts flagging people as internal. So the problem kind of diminishes in that case. The fourth one, we're not allowing the interview committee to discuss candidates following the interview. Yeah, that's true. That part is true. But it has nothing to do with the fact that somebody's pre-selected or that we're kind of going through the motions to appease groups of people. That's not true at all. We're completely doing what Susan mentioned and avoiding this whole, groupthink, avoiding this where somebody monopolizes the decision and sways people into, and then that person's voice does not get heard. And how many times have we been in conversations where somebody kind of overshadows what your points are, and then your point isn't even part of the decision-making process. And we can't have that. We want to make sure everybody's is there for a reason. They all have expertise in that position. They all represent, hopefully, different races as well on the interview committee, so they need to have their voices looked at or listened to equally. And the best way to do that is to get everybody to write things down, so that we can look at each thing and value them equally, rather than having this big group discussion. And then, finally, that our recruitment efforts are compromising our hiring practices. And the recruitment efforts are, yes, they work together, they work in tandem, but they're layered on top of. They're not part of the hiring practices. So yeah, we're going out and recruiting. Yes, we're inviting people to Urbana to walk around. What we're trying to do is getting new people to apply that might not consider Urbana, might not have thought about Urbana. We're going to recruiting fairs and trying to find special education teachers, trying to find teachers of color, trying to find people who have special skills, and bringing them to add to the pool. But we still follow all of this. We still have jobs that are posted. They're posted for 7+ days. We interview internal candidates like 99.9% of the time, except for a couple times, and we're fixing that. We ask the same questions to everybody. We give the same experience. We're still following that. We just have this layer of recruiting that we're doing in order to bring in. And without those efforts, we may not be improving in these goals. We might not be able to even match our student population down the line. And it's certainly something that research says we need to do. And we all know, clearly you guys all support it. It is board policy. It's also part of the CBA that we want to do that. But we're doing that within the lens and structures of this. We're not compromising this practice. But I understand the perception, because people will see, oh, well, this person's getting kind of this special treatment. If that person then ends up in the position, they might think, oh, it was kind of a done deal already. Why did I go through the process? But the thing is, we're bringing people who are excellent to our campus. When we go out, we're not just inviting we're bringing excellent people, excellent candidates of color. We're bringing top quality people, and they will rise to the top on their own. So we'll come in, we're recruiting them, we're getting them hopefully part of the interview, and then the rest is up to them, their experiences, their interview. It's all separate. It's completely they run kind of parallel, but one feeds into the other, but the interview itself, it's separate. And so if they end up in the position, that's great. Then our recruiting efforts have done their due diligence. They've done what we need to do. If they don't, then we need to go back and recruit, or somebody else was selected. And that's good too, because that's what we're always doing, is trying to find the most excellent candidates. So, it's important for us to do this. We'll keep working. We have lots of different strategies that we're excited about. I do have a video to show you. I'm not sure if I should take questions about this process. I know you, Benita, I believe you had one still. So we
I
can
saw-
cut.
yeah.
You had one too. Okay. So we could do that, and then we could come to the video in a few minutes. So.
Yeah, there's lots of questions, so
Great,
I'm going to
okay.
let Benita get started.
Okay, mine is not a question.
Okay.
It's going to lead to one of my first comment. I definitely agree. This is the first time I've seen HR go outside of the district instead of sitting, waiting on people to come. So I'm in agreement with them. They're out here looking for candidates. I know that. Secondly, this evidence-based research, I challenge the board members, read it. Read it, because I do evidence-based research. I use that on my job, and these findings, it's steady growing with this because of the way our kids are behaving. So she's got current research, so I don't see, we have to go 10 years. So you've got current research, so I commend you on that. And I'm going to go over some of it and do the correlations. But the other thing that I have comment about, you are also hiring Urbana graduates that are not bought here because they're not in administrative position. But aren't you Larry Urbana? Are you not? He's in Urbana. I thought so. And so we are hiring Urbana alumni. I'm alumni. I'm just Ohio College. But that was a concern. I'm applauding you for all of that. But I've been hearing, because I'm everywhere, okay? I've been hearing that we've got people in coordinators' positions, and I'm a degree person. I believe that you have to have the professionalism and the certification like these great candidates. Well, they're not candidates anymore. They are staff members, administrators that you've hired. They've come with 1 and 2 degrees, doctorates. I'm very impressed with that, what you're bringing to the table. So your process is great to me, and just listening and reading through all the procedures. But the only thing I want to say is everyone's going to be looking at this picture, okay? And my only concern, as I said, is these children right now and their behaviors, to see what's going to come of what we're trying to do. I'm very excited about it because our kids are hurting. But we got people in coordinator positions. They're going around in the area and they don't have degrees. They're in the elementary schools.
Exactly.
And I'm a little concerned about that, because coordinators, I thought you at least have to have a bachelor's degree. But some don't even have the associate, and they're going around with coordinator titles. So I do have a question about that, because I think there's a level of evaluation, and because I'm education and social work, so I know the certifications levels. And it's very important that we make sure that these people with these titles actually have the credentials for those titles. So that's the only concern I have, because I think you all are just doing great work. The community, all I heard was our job fair. Everywhere I went, Urbana, and I was real excited about it. So people are coming from other counties, and that's good. And our alumni are coming back. That's good. And we haven't had that in a long time. So I just want to check that one with this coordinator positions, because I got to really look into it. Because 2 people, doctorates, came to me and said, you got people with no degrees working in the schools, and they're not support staff. And so I need to get clarification on coordinators and how they get that title.
So I'll answer that one just briefly.
In general, don't do specifics, in general. I don't want to discuss specific individuals.
Was not going anywhere
Okay, that's
near
fine.
specific individuals.
Thank you.
To my knowledge, there aren't people with the title coordinator in our elementary schools at all. so I don't know what that is. We do have a number of, I'm thinking there are a few coordinators that are licensed faculty positions in ELL and in other areas. We have student engagement advocates who have bachelor's degrees. We have clinical professionals who have master's or doctorates. So I don't know what these positions would be that are raising concern, but if you would like to speak to me afterwards about very specifics, I'd be happy to run those down, because there aren't people with the title coordinator in our elementary schools unless they are licensed faculty positions. And I will double check on anyone that you want to have me double check on, but are you aware of any coordinators, Jacinta, that are in non-licensed faculty positions?
We have volunteer and mentoring coordinators that just organize and
Sure.
recruit.
Yeah.
It is a
It's a
paid
paid
position.
position.
So those are the community coordinators in the C one-to-one mentoring program, that those positions have been there for 20-some years.
Well, they have to have an associate's degree
Yes.
or higher, and they're just coordinating and within that program just to research volunteers and to bring volunteers into the schools, tutors, mentors, parents, within that big CU mentoring program,
Yeah.
not working one-on-one with students themselves.
Yeah, thank you. That is true.
Yeah, yes. So they're not any of like the mental health specialists or anything like that. They're just trying to, I mean, it's a lot of kind of desk work. So working on, or going out and just saying, oh, would you like to volunteer in our school? Let me organize, you can go into this third grade classroom and help in that classroom. So I think an associate's in that case is very appropriate. Or higher, or beyond, yes. Some support staff, but not in a coordinator role, to my knowledge either. But all of the job descriptions that go out, I mean, they all have minimum requirements, and we're very careful about making sure that people who apply do, I mean, that is part of the process, and part of my check too. So I check all of those job descriptions, I make sure the posting looks appropriate. Many of these positions and job descriptions have been out there for years, like Don said, this one, it's been 10, 20 years that we've had this specific position. I'm not sure that's what you were even referring to, but that's the only one I can think of. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
My question,
But thank you. Good.
my
Thank
question
you.
is, you were talking about if applicants applied on the tail end.
Mhm.
Well, how is an applicant supposed to know if there's no time limit? You know, like this position's open for 7 days or 10 days. I mean, you said that a lot of positions are open longer than 7 days.
Mhm.
So how is an applicant to know if there's not a specific timeline?
Sometimes we do post timelines, but not always, because we'll leave it open until it's filled. We'll leave it open until we can feel like we've got a good, solid applicant pool in order to move forward. That's just,
And when it is filled, how often do they take it off of the websites that you were talking about? Immediately?
it's all automated, yes, immediately. As soon as the administrator puts in the recommend to hire, then I review all of the references and just make sure that is all accurate. I check for that one as a current supervisor or recent supervisor. I check those 2 questions. I assess the entire reference. I approve it, and when I hit approve, it moves through a workflow so that other people will get a chance to look at them as well. Kathy Barber is one of them who will look through all of them and then just do her approval. If it's a special ed, it goes through Todd Taylor. He'll do his approval. It's all kind of set up with just going through all the right people, and then as soon as that final approver, it's usually about 3 steps, then it's all automated. It submits it, it closes the posting, it takes it down from the social media. There's nothing else that we have to do. It's just, again, pretty slick in the system, so then it closes it. And one thing that's nice is that this system allows us is that candidates who apply, they have basically a portal. So when you apply for 10 positions in the school district, they can log in and they can look at the status of those 10 applications. Is that position still active? Is that position closed now? Can I withdraw my application? Something that we were looking for when we were picking a new application system, so that they can log in. People can, of course, always call and ask, and they do. The person who works our front desk, Angelica, she does all of the job postings, and then she's also kind of our HR receptionist, central office receptionist. She gets lots of phone calls and will ask about positions, and she'll be able to give them more details about have they started hiring, and then she'll also route quite a bit of them to Larry, who will end up talking to lots of applicants to let them know where they are in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And Brenda, our employees are all emailed as soon as the job is posted. So Jacinda just referred to Angelica, emails the whole district. So everyone gets an email for each open job, because we want to make sure that people in our district who are interested hear about it first. They don't have to keep checking the website. They receive the email.
And there's a link right in that email to just click apply, and then it takes them right to that job posting. And so internal applicants or internal Urbana people, they know it's a 7-day window. And so, and that's just kind of common knowledge. It's listed in the CBA. It's very well known and well advertised. And so they would know when it gets posted. They would know when it gets emailed out, because that's immediate. They would know to get their application in within 7 days to be fully considered.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
I'll try and be quick.
That's
Thank you
okay.
for your presentation, though. I mean, one is, I appreciate the rationale that you provided for why you conduct interviews as you do. It makes total sense to me. And I assume that rationale goes, it's explained in just that way to the interview committee, so that they know why they're not having a conversation afterwards. For all the reasons you gave to us, that's fully explained to those who are on interview committee, so that they don't walk away from the process feeling undermined or what, whatever might come out of it. Is that the case?
I believe that to be the case.
Okay.
I'm not in every single interview, but I believe, yes, that
That's
is the case. And at the end, they'll say, we're not discussing it. This is why. Please write everything down. I do have a session, if I can make it through, tomorrow with all principals. And this is one of the pieces I'm going to cover as well tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm going to go through the entire presentation, just making sure we have a lot of new administrators.
Yeah.
Huh? I think it's going to be tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's like a training
principals
HR
meeting?
meeting with principals.
Yeah, training.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. That makes total sense.
Yeah, and
but-
so I want to make sure we discuss all of this too, so that they have the upfront knowledge, especially for the new ones who will just be kind of joining us in this. So.
Well, that kind of feeds into my second question. In the materials you provided us, that you kind of summarized here, you talk about in the screening process, hiring administrators screen applicants to determine who will be screened, and the screening process might include a small team of employees who have direct connection or expertise. And I heard you say earlier, in response to a question Brenda asked, that it almost always includes a team. I assume the hiring administrator is the person to whom the new hire would report to. So
Right.
if it's a counselor at a school or a teacher, it would be the building principal. I guess when I first read that before your presentation, when it said the screening process might include a small team, I read that to mean that, but might also just be the hiring administrator screening the applicants to determine who would get an interview, knowing how many of our building principals are quite or absolutely new. It just doesn't seem fair to them or to the applicants to have them making those screening decisions when they are so new to our district. So it sounds like the might is really, except in very rare cases, the hiring administrator includes a team of others who have additional knowledge.
Right. I would especially say that's the case with faculty positions, coordinator positions, any kind of administrative.
Okay, good.
That certainly there are maybe if in situations where you might not do a team would be like my scenario I keep bringing up, like the crossing guard position or maybe a substitute position where, you know, we can hire many people,
Yeah.
or, you know, many sub-lunchroom supervisors, and you only might get a handful of applicants.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of quickly looking through for the basic minimum requirements, and then hopefully inviting everybody who meets in.
Okay, thank you, that makes sense. And then just two more quick ones. How much is shared about the screening, interviewing, hiring process after the fact? I mean, if someone applied and she or he didn't get an interview, is it possible for that person to know that, oh, we had, 50 applicants, 10 of whom were interviewed, half of them were internal? Is that information able to be shared or knowable, or are we not allowed to do that?
I would advise you not to do that. Unfortunately, this entire hiring process has become such a fertile area of litigation. We typically, and as a practical matter, I don't like it, but we typically tell you, you just don't say anything.
Okay. And then I guess my final question is, if someone is concerned, an individual, either an employee or a community member, about processes followed in screening and hiring, who do you advise that they talk to in our district? I mean, if they, if they're in a building and they say, gee, I don't think proper procedure was followed, what's your recommendation on how they get some answers to their concerns?
I would certainly want them to come in and talk to me, so that I could do some digging and usually probably alleviate their concerns, let them know, oh, well, we were able to follow this process. The job was posted this long, these applicants, within the ability, within the law of being able to provide that information. But I certainly could at least speak generally, or go through the framework for that posting.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks, Jacinda.
Sure.
Ann, did you have questions?
I did, yes, and I'm sorry, I have quite a few. So, okay, to go, one of the things you said about the internal and external applicants, and maybe there's a situation where there's just so many people you can't look at them all, but do you screen, is there a possibility that if somebody gets overlooked because they ticked the wrong box, do you still look at all the candidates just to make sure that there are no names that got miscategorized? I mean, if somebody did accidentally tick the box that said external candidate, but they were internal, would you still be looking through all the external candidates' names and then, to make sure that nobody was miscategorized that way, so that they didn't get overlooked?
That would certainly be the hope, yes. Yeah, definitely.
And that would be the hiring administrator that would be doing that.
That would be the hiring administrator.
That wouldn't necessarily be someone over here.
In central office?
Right.
That's correct.
No, I wasn't implying that. I was just saying it's because I know that a lot of things are done electronically. I mean, if in the old days when it was paper, you could just shuffle through all the papers and look. But if it's a more time-consuming or cumbersome process to distinguish between them, is that an effort that you could try to eliminate so that people don't get mixed up by accidentally marking the wrong box or whatever?
Yeah, I think I certainly have a plan for how to do that, because, like I said, they have to click a certain link in order to get into the internal applicant, but, or they click the kind of regular apply link and it goes to the external.
Okay.
And that's by clicking one or two of those links, that's what checks the box in the application, and then allows us to do that sort to see who's internal and who's not. And so if they pick the wrong thing and they don't end up going in and marking themselves as internal, and there's a couple different places where it will say internal.
Yeah.
If they don't kind of find their way to that link, then it won't check that box.
Right.
But my plan is, once we get a little slowed down here in the next couple of days, is to go through and do a little revision of our applications and just add some questions in there that are going to be sortable for a different view. So right now, the view when the principals look, they view based on whether that box is clicked or not, and that's kind of a behind-the-scenes box. It's nothing that an applicant really clicks, but I can actually add something into the application to avoid this. And to my knowledge, I believe it's happened once, and we were able to bring applicants in, the internal applicants in, and still offer them the interview. I haven't heard any other scenario where it has happened, because I think we do, when you open up the application, you might say, oh, look, because we don't know everybody. I mean, there's no way that one of our principals is going to know all 1,008 employees.
Okay.
And so they really depend on that box to make sure that they include those internal applicants. But I think I can build in kind of a safeguard as a way to double kind of check that.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to do that soon and then share that with
I understand. I mean,
principals.
technology is one of those things that you just, you
Yeah.
think you've put out fires in one spot and then another one pops up.
Right, right.
Okay, so I still have more questions. I'm sorry. So the groupthink drawbacks, I understand the reason behind that, and I can totally see that when you have one person who's really vocal, who kind of can tend to talk over somebody, not talk over, but people might be less willing to voice their opinion if they think that somebody in the hiring committee would be have more experience or something. But
Right.
But having said that, if is it how will people then know? I mean, it's sort of. How will people know if they're on the recommending committee? Let's say it's, somebody in the department, or it's a team members who are looking for this applicant, and they all rate or rank or list however the assets that they want for their top candidate. How will they know that those opinions have been heard by the hiring person at the very end of the day? I mean, let's say they recommended somebody and that person wasn't the one who ended up getting hired. Do they have a way of finding out what the reason was, ultimately why? I mean, let's say it's a team member at a school, or it's a department chair at a school or something, and they make a recommendation but it's not followed. Is there,
Well, just not, I'll come back to your question, but just kind of another little scenario about, let's say we let interview committees discuss, and then they all decide, oh, applicant A, for whatever reason, whether somebody monopolizes the conversation or applicant A is great. And then the principal says, okay, we're all going to go with applicant A. And then the principal gets on the phone and does the reference checks, because that comes after. And something comes up in the reference check. And applicant A cannot be selected for whatever reason. And so then they pick applicant B. But then you just had 10 people in a room agree applicant A was the best. Can you go back to those 10 people and say, well, I picked applicant B because this is what happened in the last reference check? You can't. You shouldn't. And so then you have 10 people thinking, oh, well, this administrator overruled me or overruled this team. We had this group consensus. And so then it can get into a legal issue where you're revealing kind of what a reference check says. And we can't do that either. And so, I didn't bring that up earlier, but that's something you also want to avoid is not just the group think, but this type of scenario.
While we're on this topic, you want to say something about this topic? Don't leave this topic until I get a chance to talk.
I was just, yes, I can see that pitfall, but surely they would say, well, these are my top three. A person in a group, and I'm not saying we need to go back to the groupthink mentality or a committee who sits down and talks about it. I don't, that's not my, that's not my purview. But I'm just saying, is it possible that people could still rank them and say, these are my top three candidates, and, with the understanding, if this person's references didn't check out, well, number 2 got chosen. But if it's somebody who wasn't chosen at all, who was in the minds of a lot of the people who were sitting on the committee's top 3, top 5, top whatever, and it was somebody else who was hired completely, they still, whether they've met to talk or not, might be sat there wondering, why didn't the person we really think was best qualified get hired here? And and that's not to delve into personal issues such as a background check or anything else. That's I think we all understand as professionals that's something that HR people are privy to, and that's the way it should stay. But is there ever a way to find out reasons why, if people had selected in a group they wanted candidates A, B, and C, but candidate F got chosen instead, what the reason was behind that?
That's a really tricky line to draw, though, because as soon as you start disclosing some reasons, but not others, it becomes obvious what the reason was for the ones you don't disclose, like, oh, bad reference, or not supposed to work with kids, or, all of the reasons that would disqualify someone at that point are usually pretty bad. And so by saying, what?
What about personal reasons,
Right.
I'm sure that comes into play, whether that's a bad reference or not.
It absolutely does.
It could be a personal reason.
And the other thing is sometimes you have employees that applicants that turn down an offer for very personal reasons. And again, not capable of sharing that and shouldn't share that. My suggestion on that would be to really make sure prior to the process, everybody really understands how the process works.
Right.
how those rankings are factored, what the process after those rankings are factored, and the fact that we cannot tell you why maybe the top ranked person may end up not of getting a position. I think that will alleviate a lot of concerns and also build up trust without having to worry about possibly violating trust issues from your applicants, because that's going to affect your applicant pool too.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on
Go
this.
ahead, please.
I mean, let me begin by, whatever you're doing this year and over the last couple of years, I do disagree that for years the district has gone out and tried to seek applicants. But whatever you're doing this year has had wonderful results. And so, good, positive things. But on this group thing, I'm really struggling with that because we have 7 members on this board, and I dare say that we come to better decisions when the 7 of us talk about it than one of us making the decision. As a matter of fact, when I train people how to be good school board members, I tell them not to reach a conclusion until they listen to all 7 members talk about it. Because then different perspectives come in and we all learn something, and I oftentimes change my mind. Our superintendent has a cabinet, and he works and makes team decisions. At our building level, we have leadership teams, and we stress the idea of collaboration. This whole district is built on the concept of collaboration at all levels, up and down. And I think it's very naive to think that an interview committee doesn't talk about the applicants. Very naive. Whether it's during the interview or whether it's out over the coffee machine after the interview's over. And to me, the better issue is training the person who's leading the interview to make sure that no single individual talks over everybody else, to make sure that all perspectives are heard, to make sure that everyone has a chance to weigh in. Because things are going to come up in an interview, and there's 5 people on the interview team, same answers given, and 5 people hear it 5 different ways. And to not share, I'm really, 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 really struggling with that part of your process. I don't think it has the ability to service as well as you think, because no one individual has a corner on all the knowledge. And everybody hears things very differently, and I think that needs to be shared. Every other decision process in this district is based on collaboration with somebody being the ultimate decision maker. Every other process, except this one, doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense. And I just have a real problem with that. So I'm kind of building on what a couple people have asked about. Legally, if we can't talk about things before we make a decision, then this collaborative body here needs to be disbanded, and one person needs to be the school board member, and be done with it. I think legally there's ways to meet your legal challenges by proper training of the interview team leader, the person who's leading the interview.
Training is critical. I mean, I agree with that statement 100%. I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, is when the board is meeting, you have an administrator that can guide you on these are issues you cannot discuss, or an attorney present sometimes that tells you you cannot consider this factor, you need to stop talking about it. And that trickles down, but on some of these positions, it would be absolutely critical that the training go all the way down to the most basic level, because as noted before, hiring especially has become an especially litigated area in, I don't want to say the recent past because it's been, a decade, but even with good intentions, people ask illegal questions, and it's a problem. And if you have multiple people talking, the benefit of having everything written down is that this is where everybody felt, this is where it ranked.
Well, that's a scripted interview. I mean, what you're talking
Yeah.
about is a scripted interview with specific questions that are common to every interview.
But I'm also talking about the discussion afterward, because that's the part that very rarely is documented and is very difficult to establish down the line if you end up in litigation.
I think the unintended consequence, though, is that the divide and conquer mentality is there, that if you feel like you can't collaborate with any of the other people on your hiring team, you don't know what their opinion is, you don't know whose opinion may be valued more than another person's. You know, I mean, so I ranked candidate A as number 1, candidate B as number 2, but candidate G is the one who got chosen. Did everybody else think the same as me? I mean, that's what people might come away thinking if they're not allowed to discuss it, which is what, you know, I think... It feels to me like it's sort of a back-ended way of avoiding the consequence of discriminating against somebody or releasing something confidential, when the front-end way would have been maybe what John said, which is to train the interviewers better and to make sure that the people on the team are asking strictly professional questions. You know, whether let's say it's in a department, it's in the math department or something. Well, you know, I mean, if I were in that decision hiring thing and my department chair was sitting there, I would want to hear the opinions of the department chair, because that person has the most experience in math and would be able to ask really relevant professional questions that I might not if I was, like, say, a beginner teacher or something. I don't know. I'm just
right.
That's what I'm saying is that's
and
what
that kind of
you're
goes back to
losing
the
by not having
scripted
that.
interview question, which insulates from liability on that end.
And part of it is, too, no interview team should be instructed to rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No interview team should ever be instructed to do that. An interview team should be instructed to review who's
Recommended, highly recommended,
and not recommended. And so the issue of deciding between, well, my first choice didn't get selected, well, nobody should have a first choice. Human nature, everyone's got.
Yes.
But the interview team as a whole comes out with a group decision of highly recommended, because there's only one decision maker when it comes to actual final hiring. And that's the only opinion that really counts. And legally, that should be the only opinion that counts.
But legally, it's not the only opinion that counts. Now, that said, there are ways to balance both of these interests. And as noted, training, and I mean, it's really vigilant training and making sure that whomever is in charge makes people stay focused and within the bounds of what's legal. But my purpose here is just tell you what's legal, not legal. What the best practice or what direction you want to take is entirely in the purview of the board.
There are a couple things that I think are maybe worth noting just to keep in mind. One is the putting the value on the written feedback of the individuals as opposed to a group discussion. This isn't new, especially with our administrative hires. At least 7 years of administrative hires we've used this as a model. I mean, this predates my time as assistant superintendent. The other thing to keep in mind is as we include, and again, this has been very relevant for a long time with administrative hires, but as we include community members on these interview teams, and we have community members, we have internal applicants, we've talked about them some. We sometimes have community members who are applicants. A discussion about current peers, discussion in front of parents about current teachers or about parents who are applying for a job or community members who are applying for a job. It's the issue of being thoughtful to our candidates and not giving our candidates, internal candidates, community member candidates, families who want to apply, not letting them, not wanting them to hesitate to apply for jobs because they will be discussed as part of the interview process is very much on our mind. We want to encourage our community members, our family members, and our current employees to apply for positions. And one thing that can have a chilling effect is them thinking about the fact that at the end, their peers or people they know or their kids' teachers are going to be discussing them. has had a chilling effect. So I do want, I mean, especially, and again, I'm referring to a history here with administrative candidates, but the collaboration in terms of what the interview committee or committees, for some of these larger committees, ask the questions, that's collaborative. We do surveys of all the stakeholders before those administrative interviews. So, I mean, the fact that there's not discussion in an interview committee, and for principal positions, we're usually talking 2 interview committees interviewing simultaneously. You know, there's not discussion within each one, there's not discussion across them. It's been the way we've done business here for quite a while. And so yes, it's trickling down to other positions as well, but it has been for a while as well. And we've had a lot of support from the UEA over the course of rolling this out, because when we first, I mean, I was, although I wasn't in my current position, I was one of the interview team leaders when Scott Woods was hired as UMS principal, and we used this kind of a format then, and that took some collaboration with the interview teams and the union, but it's gotten easier and easier as people have felt like, well, my voice was heard. So.
No, I'm done. Got my questions answered. I'm sorry. Nope. One last question. I'm just curious. You mentioned at the beginning of the discussion about 2 at-large positions that you keep open. Could you explain that again a little bit more? Because that's something that's new to me.
That is from, hello, is that on? Okay, thank you. That is from the CBA. So it's listed there as the 2 at-large, and we haven't actually needed to use that in this year at all. So that's if we find some excellent candidates that maybe 2 minority recruits that we really, really like and want to move forward with, but we don't have a position at that point posted. So this was an agreement with the UEA that in order to try to increase our diverse pool, we could hire those 2 and then find a position for them.
So what does that look like, though? I mean, in really practical terms, and how does that work out for us, for the buildings budget-wise, or the district office or whoever budget-wise? I mean, is that something that we've written into our budget for, salaries and stuff?
It's not something we've written into our budget, but it is something we've used in the past. There have been many times when, in the past, and again, it goes back several years, a candidate was hired without a position, and then as positions came open throughout the summer, that person would be placed by HR into a building without the interviews, the selection process, because that's an agreed upon practice with our collective bargaining unit. Now, one of the reasons why we haven't had to use that is because we've done a much better job recruiting a more diverse pool of candidates. And so in the past, when that was used, oftentimes those were the only 2 people of color hired in a year, because we weren't doing as good a job recruiting. And I don't mean to say that, in any way as a critique, but we are making efforts that I've never seen our district make in terms of recruiting candidates of color and increasing the number of applicants of color in our pools.
And I wasn't asking because of the people of color issue. I was actually just asking like the mechanics of it. I mean, what do you give that person to do?
To reach back in history, even back behind
Yeah.
earlier than Don, what the district has really done is a better job of encouraging people who are going to move on to resign sooner. We used to have a lot of times we wouldn't know people were leaving the district until sometimes 5 days before school would open. And all of a sudden we'd be flooded with all these resignations and not be able to hire. And so when this first came into the CBA, that was the problem it was trying to address, is by then we sometimes couldn't do an adequate job of, so said our HR director 4 HR, 5 HR directors ago, that they needed to have people hired to fill jobs that they knew were going to open, just didn't know which ones were going to open up. And so the district does a lot better job these days of, our teachers are more responsible in letting us know when they get an alternate position.
Okay.
That also figured into that addition. But it's not a budget issue because they're eventually filling a role that
Right.
would
That's
have-
what I was curious about. I just didn't know how it worked. You know,
Yeah.
is it, like, if somebody you keep on, you know, as an at-large person in February, but there's no position available to them, you know, until August, is that, you know, is
No,
that something
those-
that happens? or is
That usually meant implementation as somebody was hired in June or July.
Right,
But people
gotcha.
had not yet resigned.
Mhm.
And so, Jacinda, do you still get flooded with resignations in the last, from mid-August to 1st of September?
No, I mean, no more than, yeah, it's not a flooding. And part of the things that we have done in order to avoid that is to allow benefits to continue through the summer, to allow paychecks to continue through the summer, you know, if we've gotten so far, so that we don't, not that we wouldn't keep paying them, but sometimes we'll pay out or stop those benefits. And so we've implemented those things.
I'm glad you brought that
Right.
up, because when we implemented the health insurance stayed in effect,
Right.
12 months out of the year, that problem really did begin to
It
disappear.
does,
Because people
yes.
would not announce until they had a new position to go to keep their benefits. And
Right.
that became,
Yeah,
thank you.
and that
for-
was a big player in that, so.
yeah, Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one more question, and again, I want to applaud the efforts that have occurred this year, and
Thank you.
and this is not a reflection of any current hires, but 7 days is a minimum, but I think some positions in the district, and because I'm so thrilled with who we hired as our high school principal, let me use the high school principal situation as the example, so that you understand you have my full confidence, and this is not a reflection. But the last time we had a high school principal resign at the time that this one resigned, we had an interim, he's sitting back there. We had an interim for a year because we felt that it would take a whole year to recruit and properly find the individual. Now, I'm confident that we've got the right individual, but maybe we need to differentiate about certain roles. Like, for instance, I would not want to have superintendent tell us in the early June that he got another job, and we would be expected to hire the next superintendent in 30 days. It's not possible.
Right.
There are many positions in the district that I think fall into that same category. And so as we talk about our minimum time period, maybe we need a minimum for certain kinds of positions, and we need another minimum in the rules for other kinds, so that we have a policy position to fall back on as board members, instead of you all trying to work and us being concerned on an ad hoc basis. It might be better that it's done as a matter of policy. It might also then encourage individuals in those positions to let us know at a more appropriate time that they're not going to be with us in the following fall. We had the similar situations with folks when we ask for advance notice of retirements, and that gives us plenty of time to fill certain key positions. And so it's just something I want to throw out there, because we landed well. We landed well with high school, but I will tell you that a lot of people in the community are, before we landed well, had expressed, what do you mean? He resigned in June and you think you're going to have a new one ready in August? And we expressed a lot of that concern here at the board level. And superintendent assured us that we would do well. Well, it helped to have somebody who had been through a long period of testing and process that was ready. But had that not been the case, it might have been an issue. And so rather than putting pressure on you all, maybe we as a board need to think that through and identify positions where we do not want a 30-day wonder showing up at the door. We want to take adequate time to recruit, because for the last couple of positions of that level, we've not had to recruit. For the last couple of superintendent positions, we've not actively recruited. We could be criticized for that, I guess. But in most situations, this is a district that people want to come to. This is not a district that has to go out and search hard to find people. We have people that are coming to us. And so we have the luxury of maybe recruiting, some could call that poaching, people. We don't necessarily want to maybe have all of our candidates come from people that are looking for jobs. We want to select candidates from people that are currently well employed and are very happy where they are, and people that are employing them are happy with them. But we want to recruit them. And that was the case with Amberg when we brought Superintendent Amberg in. It's been the case with a couple of our building principals where we've gone out and sought. And I want adequate time to do that. I don't want 7 days. And I don't want us picking our top from a group of 10 when maybe the best group of 10 didn't even apply because they didn't see it in 7 days. And so that's just something that I want us to. Now, we landed well. Please, don't want anybody to take my comments being critical of where we are. But looking to the future and trying to deal with that, maybe we need as a policy level group, we need to think about what kinds of positions in this district should be handled maybe a little differently.
And while you're kind of thinking as a group on that, if it comes up at a different time, I just want you to consider a few things, because you have landed really well in several of our position hires. And so if you had kind of opened it up to a longer period, those people may have landed somewhere else. And so by restricting yourself or going through, and I'm not saying that shouldn't be the direction you go, of course we'll follow whatever policy the board decides, but sure, if we hadn't have landed well, or we didn't get somebody so great as Dolores, then I don't think we would have hired Dolores.
Or Joe.
Or
Dolores
Joe,
or
yes,
Joe.
right. We would have reopened it. We would have said, these are not the right people. We need to keep searching. We need to put an interim place. We've done that before. We've done that because, in previous, you pointed it out when Joe was the interim at the high school, so we weren't ready. And so it's all just about timing. It's about knowing the candidate pool. It's about knowing the needs of the building. It's about saying, okay, we have strong candidates. We feel good about these strong candidates. They excel, so we can move forward. You do the interview and you decide, okay, no, maybe, or the reference checks, no, maybe not. So we have to open it up and put an interim in place.
Well,
so the more kind of policy you put in, the more your hands are tied if there are great candidates within a certain time. So just keep that in mind as you kind of make your decisions moving forward. But I do understand
the
your
flip side of
points.
that, and I'll speak from personal experience in that I was with a certain agency in town for 40 years, and it took a couple of times before I was named CEO. And I resented it at the time. But the process that I went through as an internal candidate was that I had to go through the same search process, same regional and search process. And at the time of going through the process, it was extremely frustrating and difficult. But afterwards, it was good because I had been tested against every other potential candidate. So every good candidate internally should be willing to allow themselves to be tested against that superior pool, because then you move forward with greater strength, because you you have competed well against all the other applicants, and you can be stronger in your ability to make changes, because then no one is second guessing, saying, well, you know what, if they had done a search, you wouldn't have, you know.
Right.
The answer to that is, there was a search, and I was still named. And so you have the ability to be strong. So that's the flip side of that discussion.
Other questions?
Sorry, I forgot to chair. I'm sharing. Any other questions and discussions?
It really is more a question, but more of, I guess, an invitation. Tonight, we've really focused on hiring practices, but another part of your job is staff retention. So I'd like to, maybe in a future study session, have a focus maybe on things like exit interviews and things we're doing to.
We were hoping you'd ask. So yes, we would love to come back and talk more about our recruitment strategies and our retention strategies. So we were kind of going to make it a bigger presentation, but knew that it was kind of probably going to be a two-part series. So we'll come back and focus on that. Benita mentioned some of the, talking to Urbana High School alum, bringing them back, and that's one of our major goals this year, is to really talk to high school students and get them interested and encouraged in going to get their teaching degree and coming back. So we want to showcase some of the work that we're doing. Yes. So we thank you for that invitation. We accept. And we have a teaser for you too, actually, a little video teaser, unless there were other questions.
I'm going to ask Lori to turn off the fan just because I want to make sure that the sound on the video is picked up.
No.
You got it. You're good.
Oh, it's up there.
Can you turn the fan?
Oh, don't look at that.
Fan.
Don't talk about that.
Or you didn't.
So I need to.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Good evening. While Jacinda is getting that set up, again, I'm Jessica Brown, PD and Curriculum Coordinator for the district, and so I'm very excited to be a part of this and be able to come in at the end with just the exciting part of what, some of the things we have been doing. And as we just said, we would love to come back and talk more about the recruiting efforts that we're doing and the retention to try to keep our amazing teachers that we're selecting. But one of the ways that we have been doing it that we wanted to end with, to at least give you that teaser, is this video that we had our high school students put together. So I went and met with them, Jacinda and I, and just talked through some basic, what we were looking for in order to try to increase our candidate pool and highlight some of the features that we feel proud of to be in Urbana. And I just gave them some very basic guidelines and let them run with it. And the product is amazing. So we wanted to show you guys this recruitment video that they ended up putting together for us.
I think there's a lot of things I like about this place. I really like the fact that this is a really cool community. You can barely ask any question without having about 15 people willing to answer it for you, and they have a lot of ideas and a lot of suggestions for what you can do.
It's small, it's more personal. Most kids that grow up, they come to us, so we kind of get to see them grow up.
I feel like we're very student-centered. We worry about kids first, and I feel like almost every single teacher has that mindset.
My favorite thing about the teachers is the wide range of teachers. There are lots of different teachers. They have lots of different opinions, lots of different personalities.
The teachers in Urbana, they give you a lot of opportunities. They point you in the right direction, send you to the right people, and they set you up for success.
One of the greatest things is the team mentality. We collaborate with teachers and other staff across the district to do what's best for our kids. You aren't feeling like, oh, I'm the best I can be right now, that I can still become a better teacher. I can learn from my colleagues, I can learn from other people, and it's that mindset of continuous growth that doesn't always exist every place you work. The professional development that's offered to teachers is provided by your colleagues, and you also get to move over on the pay scale for teachers by taking these courses and accumulating hours, even if you don't have an advanced degree from university.
My job as a coach is to work with teachers doing professional development, but then there's also after school programs and different things that you can get involved in to become a better teacher.
I'd say that Urbana has a lot of innovative programs that I haven't seen other places. The early childhood program is where I wanted to work for a long time, and it's because it's a leader in early childhood in the state.
We try and have a lot of different things offered through our Splash program. So we've got everything from academic after-school groups like Lego Robotics to sports. And then we have our GSA, which I think is a really big thing that not all middle schools allow students to have.
The best thing is the athletic program. I really enjoy the athletics. I play baseball and basketball.
I also really think it's cool that we have the dual language program at the elementary schools. I hope that when my kids go through Urbana schools that they would be able to do that. I think that we have a small feel, even though we've got a lot of schools within our district. So I like the feeling that people at central office know me, and I feel like when I've talked to my friends in other school districts, that's not always the case.
Here at the high school, I really like the sense of community. We do a lot of things together as a school, whether that be going to the football games on Friday night or just having like Tiger Pride Week when we had that in the fall and things like that. So just everybody pulling together and having a sense of shared purpose is really fun.
Any of the buildings that have had renovations and are new, which I think Urbana seems to have a commitment to continuously updating things, it makes it a nice place to work.
Out of all the schools that I've observed and been at, I've never experienced a school where there's students from all over the world coming. The amount of different cultures that I see and that I get to work with, I think is a big plus.
I'm from New York City. I'm used to being in a diverse location, and in central Illinois, to be in a place where there's people of all different types, ethnicity, racial background, languages spoken, things like that, even down to religion and things like that. So it's so different. Everyone is so different, but we all live together, we all work together, and we all try to help each other out.
Having a major university here is a big draw because there's so many things that the university offers as opportunities for individuals and families.
It allows me to kind of continue my education over at U of I, since it's right here, so I thought that's another big plus. It's such a good school, and I appreciate the effort that they put in for their teachers, right, saying that they can go over there and continue their education.
With the major university literally right on your doorstep, even though there's only 150,000 people in the Twin Cities area, it feels a lot bigger. I don't feel out of place being here, coming from New York, and not having options for entertainment and stuff like that. You know, you can go to a basketball game or a football game, whether it's here or the university.
I love having a mid-sized city with like a good amount of people without having the traffic that you would have somewhere else like in Chicago. Having that different pace of life is really nice. It's a great place to have a family and raise your kids.
We'd love to have you in Urbana.
We'd love to have you here in Urbana.
Yeah, we would love for you to work in Urbana with us.
We'd love to have you at Urbana.
We'd love to have you in Urbana.
So again, that was just a quick teaser of some of the things that we've been working on this year for our recruiting efforts.
Thank you. Obviously, we're heading in the right direction, so really appreciate it.
Appreciate that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. So much.
Great. Thank you, folks. Continuing on with the, we have no call for any future special executive meetings. Superintendent's report?
I'll just keep it fairly brief. Highlighting our equity in action, I want to talk about the fact that we had our Equity Summer Institute at the beginning of the summer, back on May 30th, which seems in some ways like it was yesterday. In other ways, it seems like it was over a year ago. It's been an incredibly busy summer, but an incredibly energizing summer. And we had such great feedback after our Equity Institute in May that we had people asking us to do it again, the exact same thing. And so we had more people signing up, we had people signing up again, and we had people bringing friends. And so we did a repeat of our Equity Institute earlier at the end of last week. I'm sorry, I'm blending my weeks together already. And we had about 85 people attend our second one. And it was great to see so many people there and engaged, and some of them were even new teachers who were volunteering to come in as new teachers before new teacher orientation and get started. And so we're really thrilled with kind of the engagement around this work that we're doing on racial equity, and very pleased that our teachers are saying we want more. With excellence, I could talk on and on about new teacher orientation because it's one of my favorite times of the year when we get to introduce the new staff. We started yesterday. Today's only Tuesday still. We have another hour and 50 minutes. And there were so many new teachers who were so excited starting off at the middle school. Even though we had a minor glitch with the HVAC system, the crews were up there on the roof right away, got it cooled down very quickly, and the teachers were very energized, very excited. It was a great way to start the week. They're going to be with us all week long at New Teacher Orientation, and so that's part of the excellence. The other part of excellence was something I got to experience at lunch today. I oftentimes brag about Rotary and how much our Urbana Rotary supports Urbana schools. But today was kind of cool because it was actually highlighting the Girl Scout Troop 2207. And Girl Scout Troop 2207 is made up of a small but very engaged group of Urbana students who this year, the troop leader, who's an Urbana graduate, Tori Exum, is lucky enough to have all 6 of her troop members at Urbana Middle School under one roof, and so that's kind of exciting for her. So three of the students came to Urbana Rotary and talked about their service learning projects, which range from local things like running around on a canteen truck, handing out food and toiletries to homeless people here in town, to creating a shoe project for youth and adults in Uganda. Where there was a massive shortage of shoes and a lot of issues with infections that related to not having proper footwear. And so having them talk to Rotary and inspire the Rotarians was a great example of excellence from Urbana. And then finally, engagement. I do want to talk about the family and community forums. We started the family and community forums this week. Yesterday was our first one. That focus on our strategic plan. And I sent an email out to, through the Skylert system to all families. It's been posted on social media. We're inviting people to come just learn about kind of the different areas of the strategic plan, that we shared with the board last spring. And we're getting a lot of good feedback from that. Our first session last night was fairly well attended. It was not as many as I thought, but it was a really great session. The people were really engaged. They had a lot of good discussion at their tables and provided us with a lot of feedback moving forward, which is exactly what we're wanting. One of the purposes of these family forums is to recruit members of the community to serve on our action teams this fall. And so on opening day, we'll be kicking off kind of an invite to all teachers and support staff members to say, hey, come join us in this work. We've already started to engage our families and communities, and so we're excited about that. And then finally, and I will end with this, I have a lot of other things I could share, but on Thursday, if any of you have time at lunch, anyone out there in the viewing audience, one of our longest engagements has been with Piatto's Cafe, which, for those of you that don't know, recently closed as a cafe in Lincoln Square Mall. But for many years, they have been doing a buffet right before school starts to raise money to purchase backpacks. And it started out as a fundraiser for King Elementary students. And every year, Kelly Jo Lamb, the proprietor, seems to raise more and more money, and the backpacks slowly start getting out to other schools as well. And so it's really a fundraiser that started out as a focus on Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary. Because Piatto's does not have a space anymore, they are going to be running their backpack lunch buffet at Dr. Martin Luther King in their multipurpose room. And so you can come out and grab Piatto's lunch on Thursday from 11 to 2. Thank you. Ms. Kayla Lewandowski was back there giving me the numbers. So 11 to 2 on Thursday, and it's $5 for an amazing buffet meal. Come out, support our students and our families, support a local business, and have fun. A lot of us will be there, so hope to see you all there. And I'm going to stop talking.
All right. Any board reports
And
this evening?
since we had the month break, I just want to say the unique retirement for Arlene was nothing. You all missed it. I was the only board member there. They gave away a trip to Cancun. And this was real, wasn't it, Don?
Yes.
And $100 gift cards. And it was just done so great. I had never seen a retirement going. Bynum, Don, people were there. The other thing is, it's really a question you, Don, but so I ran into a grandparent whose daughter has received national recognition for, I think is it track, it's the Jones girl. She's on the national level, almost, they're thinking about the Olympics.
She's ranked nationally.
Yes.
I believe in the top 10.
I didn't
She's
know.
one of our state champions from last year. And she is, I believe, a rising junior. And so we get to see her compete for 2 more years. Yes, there is talk about Junior Olympics, and there's talk about possibly training for Summer Olympics in track. And so it's amazing. They won't catch her.
Okay, any other board reports this evening? All right, motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. We're adjourned.